Hey guys, welcome. I'm CJ. Today we're going to be looking at building our own pen testing machine. So these machines can be used for either hack the box, try hack me, or any other sort of ethical hacking or training. There's two things you're going to need to decide on before we get into this, and they are your hypervisor and operating system. So there's plenty of hypervisors out there. I'm not going to go into installing those today. But the two big ones that you might want to look out for are VMware, which is what I'm going to use today. VMware Workstation Pro is the version I'm using, or a VirtualBox, which is completely free and it's a great bit of software, but I personally prefer VMware. The second thing is your OS. So two big ones that you'll hear thrown out are Parrot OS and Kali Linux. Now, Kali Linux is by far the most popular, and that's what we're going to be going through today, installing Kali Linux 2021.1, which is the most current install as of today. All right, with that said, let's get into it. Alright guys, so this is VMware Workstation Pro, and as you can see I'm already using 2021.1, but we're going to download this from the start. The first thing we're going to want to do is download the Offensive Security VMware version of Kali Linux. To do that, we just navigate to the Offensive Security homepage, and we can find the VMware and the VirtualBox image on that site. So obviously today we're looking at VMware. Just make sure you get the right image for your hypervisor. We're looking at 64-bit, so I'm going to go ahead and download that one. I've already got this downloaded, but you'll click save and that will be saved to your default directory. Next we'll look at the file checksum. What the checksum is basically a small piece of data derived from a larger piece of data, and allows us to know that the transmission of that data has occurred without any alterations or errors. So what we can do is run the PowerShell in our command prompt. From there we use the command get tac file hash and then the file name. We can see here that the file hash is the same as the checksum that has been provided to us from Offensive Security. So that tells us the file has come across successfully. Now that we've checked the checksum and made sure that our file is all good to go, we can go ahead and unzip that file. I've already done that here, but you'll go File, Extract, using whatever tool you've got on your current terminal. Once that file is extracted, you'll see inside there are a range of files used for VMware to make sure that that file correction, that virtual machine will run correctly. So that's all there. Next, we're going to go back to our VMware workshop. Now, this is a pretty easy step. All we need to do is go File, Open, and open that file that we just extracted. So navigate to, in my case, Downloads, into the Kali folder, and then we'll get that file. We'll open that, let that load, and once it's loaded, you'll see here there are a number of settings with the virtual machine, and there's also a description that Offensive Security provides detailing the version and, more importantly, the default username and password for this virtual machine. Okay, now we're going to tweak these settings just a little bit, and this is dependent on your PC. I've got plenty of RAM, so I'm going to up this to about 8 gig of RAM. And remember, this is all shared between other VMs and your operating system, so don't go too crazy. The next thing is processors. I'm going to leave that where it is. 4 seems pretty good for what we're going to be using this machine for. Next, our hard disk. Now, it's important to remember that this directory here is actually the address for the bulk of this virtual machine and where everything will be stored. So it's 80 gig is what we're set at, and you need to be aware of how much free space you actually have. Now, if you delete this, that's it, your virtual machine is gone. So you need to remember where that is and try not to move it. Moving through to our network settings, we'll leave that as NAT. No reason to change that. You may need to change the USB settings to 3.1 if it's set to 2 by default, just in case you want to use a USB. Now that's all that we need to change here. All that's left now is to run our virtual machine. When you start for the first time, you'll get this message and you need to select that you copied it. This stops VMware from needing to generate new adapters or generating duplicate MAC addresses, which is not something you want for networking. And you can see here, for some reason the screen is not full screen. All I'm going to do is jump out and go full screen again, and that should fix that, as you can see. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is fix the background, because the current version of Kali has the most heinous background I've ever seen. Honestly, anything is better. So we're going to pick this one, and that'll do. The next thing we need to do is conduct an update of all the services on the system as is. Now, I only recommend doing this when you do your first install, as it upgrades everything on your system. The command we're going to use is sudo apt update && sudo apt full tac upgrade. And then we'll use tac y just to skip any unnecessary yeses along the way. As I mentioned, the sudo apt full upgrade is only something we should use in this first instance. After this, we'll use sudo apt update, and then we'll look to upgrade just individual services. This process is going to take a bit of time, so we're going to pause the video, let that load up, and we'll come back once it's all done. Okay, that is all updated now, and we can move on. The next thing we're going to do is, this is a personal preference of mine, just going to make some changes to our terminal. So to do that, we're going to right click and go down to preferences. We're going to change the behavior, and what I'm going to do here is set this to unlimited history. What that means is if we have a big output that goes for more than the default amount of lines, it won't get rid of it, which I find really handy. The next thing is ensuring that new tabs open up in the current working directory. That just means that every time you right click new tab, you're good to go. Finally, I'll adjust the transparency. I don't like being able to see the background. It gets me quite distracted when I can see things behind the terminal. Okay, last thing. What we're going to do now is change our password. To do that, we're going to use sudo password, PASSWD, and then root. This is going to set our root password and activate that account. Make sure you use something decent for this, 14 characters with numbers and letters, and we'll retype that phrase. Now we want to reset our Kali password so that we don't use that default credentials. Once that's done, we're all finished. The system is set up, ready to go. In part 2 of this video series, we'll go into setting up Kali in a bit more detail, adding a few tools that I think you should have, and following on from that, we'll install some tools like auto recon and dir search. Just some of the basic stuff to get us into that ethical hacking. Hope to see you there.